Use the mic. Oh, I'm gonna bring it Ross's screen. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioner Glenn.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I'm visiting my mother. She's still in the hospital. So I'm in a hotel room right now near her. And then as soon as this meeting is over, that's where I'm going.
Got it. Well, thank you for making the time and joining us. And
yeah, it's good seeing you.
Oh, likewise. Good morning, Commissioner Emery.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just fine. I received my letter from the governor, and I'm very excited about another term to be serving with you. So I just wanted to thank you again for considering me.
Well, congratulations, and I'm happy that you will be sticking around with us.
Well, I'll have to talk to you. We're opening, my nephew and I, a Black History Museum.
Oh, right. We need to do something with that.
Yes. So hopefully you all can come up our way next year when we're established. So it's very exciting for us and for this area.
I agree. No, we will definitely make that happen.
That's great.
Welcome to your first meeting.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Trying to set up everything, have everything a mess.
And then once the chair starts the meeting, we'll let you introduce yourself and all of that. So
That works.
morning, Commissioner Sarr.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning to everybody. It's now 9 o'clock, and based on my count, got 6 commissioners on here. We'll ask the executive director to confirm the quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, so the next item is the confirmation of the public notice.
Public notice was sent.
And before we go to the public participation, we have a new commissioner. So Terrence, you'd like to introduce her?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. We wanted to welcome Commissioner Anita Parra, who is joining us from Bowling Green. And Commissioner, if you wanted to give us a little bit about yourself and then proceed.
I am Anita Parra, and I am a paralegal, and I do a lot of nonprofit organization here locally in Bowling Green for our Latino community, and I have been doing it for a while now, so I'm happy to participate and help in whatever I can.
Well, Commissioner Parr, let me say on behalf of all of the commission, welcome aboard. And we look forward to working with you in this very dynamic and important work. And I think that, with your skill set and things that you've done, you bring some additional expertise that will be very helpful as we undertake, again, this very, very important work. So again, welcome to you. So why don't we go around the horn in terms of commissioner, introduce yourself to Commissioner Parra and tell us where you are, a little about yourself. So look at my picture here. I think Jim Glenn, you're the first person I see.
Okay. My name is Jim Glenn. I am a retired faculty member at the community college. I worked there for about 30 years. I was a state legislator for about 12 years. I was a city commissioner for 2 years. And I'm here to serve. It's good seeing all you this morning.
Nice to meet you.
Dr. Sarr.
Well, good morning. I'm Doris Sarr. I'm in Murray, Kentucky. I'm a former elected official also. I served on city council for 6 years in the city of Murray. And I also served as the president of the Kentucky Black Caucus. And I'm currently on the board for the Black Caucus there. I worked in higher education, and I currently work for a nonprofit as a professional grant writer.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Henry. You're muted.
Sorry. Good morning. I'm glad to welcome you. I guess I could say I'm the probably senior member of this commission. I've served as a city commissioner, and I've been on this battle for many, many years, decades of working with human rights, and I've enjoyed every moment of it, and I still have a little fight left in me. So I will trudge forward and work as long as I can.
That's awesome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Commissioner Cheney.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to the commission. My name's Ann, and I represent the 3rd District. And I also work in the nonprofit space, helping advance racial equity and social justice issues. So it's very nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Commissioner Karama.
Good morning. My name is Divine Karama. I work here in Lexington. I have a youth nonprofit that I facilitate, but I also work in the mayor's office for her youth gun violence initiative. And I've just been with the commission a little over a year. So nice to meet you.
Likewise. Nice to meet you.
Commissioner Smith.
Welcome, Anita. This is Frank Smith, and we're just glad to have you on board. I serve as senior pastor and the founder of Christ's Church for Our Community here in Louisville. I'm also Chief Operating Officer for Simmons College of Kentucky, and have served in other capacities in civic leadership. And it's very exciting to be a part of this work with the commission, and look forward to getting better acquainted with you as we deliberate over months.
Okay.
Nice.
I guess I see a phone with an 859 area code. Is it one of the commissioners, or who is that?
My guess is that's John Fisher, but I might be wrong.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other. I got all. I don't see Commissioner Lidvin, Stringer, or Worth. Anita, my name is Raymond Bursa, and I'm the chair of the commission. I have been on the commission since I guess early 2021. I am a retired college president, sometime practicing lawyer, involved in a number of things in the community here in Louisville. And again, we want to welcome you to this body and the work that we will be doing, and look forward again to working with you. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, any public participation, Terrence?
There is no public participation today.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda that I want to go to is the consideration and approval of the minute meeting held on September the 15th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Jim Glenn, second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Those opposed, then those minutes stand approved as stand approved. Next item on our agenda is we're going to go to the budget and personnel. Brandon.
Good morning. You have my report before you, and I will field any questions at this time.
Any questions for Brandon, from any commissioner? Brandon, line E399 other. Some explanation on that.
Sure. Having trouble pulling it up. I should have already. Or is your question specific to the September charge of E399 other?
Yeah, I guess I was looking at it in terms of year over year in the $40,000, and then we spend nothing in the previous year.
Yeah, nothing year to date. The 40,000 was the settlement
Okay.
with the previous employee, and the 389.54 is I apologize. It's taking me just a moment. Yeah, they do discourage using that code. But sometimes there are expenses that don't fall into any of the other categories.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll
Any-
provide specific details as to what exactly that charge is.
Any questions on the budget from Brandon? Okay. Hearing none, let's move to the next item, which is the enforcement unit report. Cynthia.
Good morning. You have in your case recommendations this month, you will see 14 cases that were from September 30th, 2022. For the October 30th cases, there's 36. There are 25 NPCs, 4 cases that were withdrawals with settlement, 1 case that was a withdrawal without settlement, and you have 5 late added cases. And I do want to indicate that one of the withdrawals with settlement is being pulled, case 1187PA, that is being pulled for this commission meeting. And I and staff are available if you have any questions about any of the cases.
Any questions from anyone? Okay, I guess I've got several, Cynthia.
Okay.
I guess my first one is relating to the housing. When we say the commission have agreed to an extension of the cooperative agreement for fiscal year 22-23, does that mean that extension is to the end of that fiscal year or beyond that fiscal year?
Terrence, I think Terrence worked with that. Can you?
So the extensions, they carry us through the HUD fiscal year 23.
Okay. Maybe when we write those up in the future, we need to be more exact in terms of where the extension to and then if it's, the federal fiscal year, say that. If it's not, say that.
You want the dates? I'll make sure that the dates are in there.
It just saying it's extended to this when we're looking at a current fiscal year or whatever doesn't necessarily give us the at least me in terms of where we are. So that's true on, I guess, on all of the extensions. In the employment and public accommodation area, in terms of where we talk about the contract period, and we had 2 cases that were rejected.
Yes.
Why were those 2 rejected?
One was rejected because of the age. It was over 5 years old, and because it was an NPC and not a PC case, they would not accept that. So we didn't get credit for that. And the other one, I think it had to do, and I'll verify it for sure. It had to do with, we took a complaint that we didn't have jurisdiction over.
Okay. Then I guess my next one on the public accommodation cases, we had 61 new public accommodation cases filed in a single month.
61 cases filed. Okay, that might be an error. I didn't see that.
No, I'm misreading it. That's
Okay.
The age of the case jumped by 61 days. Is what it did.
Yes, and one of the reasons for that is we've been focusing on the EEOC cases to finish up the EEOC federal contract year, and so there was some time that was not spent with the public accommodation cases.
Okay. Then in case number 9318E, just when you go back and check, we go from complaining being a male to complaining being a female. I guess we ought to be consistent in terms of what the individual.
We will go back and make that correction.
Okay. And that's all of my questions. Anyone else have any questions? So, hearing none on this one, what I will ask for is a motion to approve the recommendation of the staff as it relates to those listed cases and ratification of the action taken by the staff during the month of September.
So moved, Commissioner Smith.
Is there a second? Is there a second? County Commissioner, I think it's Commissioner Glenn seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. So now we will go back to the executive director's report.
Good morning, everyone, and sorry for the change in order. It will make sense as we go through the presentation. I did want to start by recognizing Chad Stratton and John C.K. Fisher, who are both celebrating their 20 years of service certificates today. And so I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge them and thank them for the work that they've done for the commission up to this point and the work that they continue to do. Letting someone in. Okay. I had a presentation I wanted to run through with you all just after some conversations that we've had, and just to really bring you all up to speed a little bit on what we've been doing and some of the things that we hope to move forward on. This is trying to get this to share. There we go. So I wanted to go through a few thoughts first about where we are as an agency and some of the things that we needed to discuss and some of the issues that have been addressed or that we've been focusing on. But we can all agree that the agency, when it was created to be this robust agency that did a lot of good work, and that's something that we aim to be. But we have seen better days. And it seems like the March on Frankfurt was forever ago when it really wasn't too long ago. And one of the reasons is we've had and some of this will be very repetitive of things we discussed, but just as an overview, our budget for the past 20 years has been consistently cut. And then 2 retirement contribution changes have really changed how we have to budget and allocate staffing. In 2008 and 2013, so much more due to the changes in the retirement laws, so much more of our budget gets appropriated for wages and retirement contributions. And so what that has done, and I'll get back to this in a minute, is as they allocate for positions, this office has had to really cut on available positions because of the available budget and what we can use for each position. We're currently one of two agencies, I believe, that is over 90% salary, wages, and retirement contributions in our budget. So the way that they space out what positions you can fill is based on the budget that you have, and then specific salary grade allotments. And so that's why our positions have not been able to be filled as things have moved on. But we also have seen more demand in types of cases that have been filed and cases that have come in. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we saw, at least from my perspective, from the day that I started in 2020 until today. And one of the big challenges was digging out of our PC or pre-PC case backlog. When I was brought in, we had 58 cases that had been severely aged that were deemed probable cause, but had not had any movement on them in years. We also had, as I said, a high increase of complaints that have come in. But as I mentioned before, we had a declining staff and declining ways to address them. We also have had turnover. And again, we haven't been able to fill those positions as people have moved on, like moved out, retired, found other positions within the state. And we've also had a shift in what's required of us from HUD and the EEOC, and that goes in reporting, in the ways that we conduct our investigations. There are new timelines that they've instituted and new checklists of things that you have to make sure you do as federal laws have changed. And so we've had to shift accordingly. And so some of our practices have needed to adjust, where we focus more on certain types of cases at certain times because of the strict requirements that they've instituted, especially with digital uploads and working within those federal systems and databases. And historically, there were admin positions to do those things, but we do not have any of those in the office anymore within the agency. And so it falls upon different people to try to do that type of work. And so it adds to the next piece of things that we wanted to talk about and address was we had a really high case age. That's separate than that probable cause backlog, but we did have a high case age for our investigations of things that were open and not PC'd. And then we had a pandemic that kept us out of the office. That doesn't even mention the months that the office was closed when the elevators didn't work. And so there have been challenges. But in spite of all of this, I know I've seen it and I've worked with people here. We've worked very hard to address a lot of these issues. And that probable cause backlog that I said was 58 cases. I'll circle back to this, but we've done a tremendous job. Colt's done a great job of addressing those. The case ages are way down, and we have done multiple process changes. I've explained some at some point to you all, but I'll go over them quickly in a minute, just as a reminder. But we also did a time study to look over the course of a month at what people were spending most of their time doing, to then address or look for ways that we could make it a little bit more efficient. That was followed by a workflow analysis of seeing how things move throughout the process and how we could identify ways to make it work a little bit more efficiently And effectively, those were the two words that I've been saying since I started. And we also did some series of assessments of identifying what are things that we could do better, looking at the results of the time study and the workflow. How can we work together to make some of these things improve? And with doing this, we've seen some measurable improvement that again has been through some targeted assessment and communication with the different units of needs, challenges, and trying to identify what we could do differently to make this work. And so I'll briefly go over a couple of the process changes before we start talking about what that has looked like and the results that we've seen. But the overall process changes for the legal case, the cases that have been accepted for probable cause, for the things that we are working as an advocate and moving through court, we had those 58 that were very severely aged, but we also had new ones that were coming in. And one of the things that we did was we purchased a case tracking software that lets us really stay on top of it. Everyone in the legal unit can access this. I can access it. And then we can see what has been going on with different cases. We can also, it has the calendar integration where we can integrate with when are court hearings, court dates, schedules, all of that. That's allowed us to really work through these cases. We added all staff meetings. You all have been provided commission tablets, which saves about 2 weeks of time in trying to mail books to people. But also, just like this past week, where we've had late editions, it's not something that's sprung on you or that we'll have to mail out. In real time, we can upload any new additions or changes to books or information that is instantaneous. And so that's really helped in some of the time of getting things out. We got agency commission cell phones for certain offices just to make sure that we're always reachable. And we made some adjustments with how we process things through the intake staff. We also made it a priority to get people who are in the office notarized. And why that's important is because when a case is filed and it needs to be, someone needs to find a notary, not everyone has quick access to a notary, but if everyone in the office is a notary, we can get those things notarized. And so we've worked on getting everyone to be made a notary so that we don't have to wait that time of someone locating a notary. We have worked on having weekly case panels. That way we don't have cases sitting before we make a decision on probable cause. We also reached a memorandum of agreement with the Attorney General's office to conduct our hearings for the cases once we've scheduled a hearing, or a lot of the time in the past year, they've also worked with Colt on facilitating settlements with the parties. And one of the things that was very important to me that I did the second week here was work with the law school and sign an MOU with the law school and the American Bar Association to make us a placement agency, which has been helpful for getting some of that extra support from the law school, and that they can work with the legal staff on some of the things that we had fallen behind on due to staff demands, doing more research and helping get some of those cases moved through. We've also worked on managing the case assignment and making sure that we do it in an equitable way that also takes into consideration the workload per investigator. That has also been brought into an investigation plan process and streamlining how we do those investigations. I'll come back to this when I talk about legal, but it's really been a way to try to make it where we get the correct questions asked in a more timely manner. And we've also made a much more accessible website for people to be able to file complaints and reach out to us when it's needed. And speaking of that website, we've added new ways to file and clarify discrimination basis options for people to file. We initially in 2020 had maybe 5 options of where the way you can file. For example, you can see the drop down of expanding how we really define sex discrimination, because then that helps us know how to structure that investigation. Instead of having just the blanket sex discrimination, it now then adds a secondary button to pick identity, transgender orientation, pregnancy, harassment. So those things have made it a little more clear on filing. So we have to do less time of follow-up and trying to get those answers. Another thing that we've added is a mandatory mediation question, because something I saw was that we had so much of a period where we were waiting to hear back from each party if they were interested in mediating. Now, when you file, the complainant is asked immediately if they would be open to mediating. And if it's a no, then it just skips that 20 days where it would sit waiting for an assignment in mediation. And that has helped us save time in the processing phase. It does add a little bit more to the enforcement officers because they get cases assigned a little more quickly, but Cynthia's done a good job of making sure that it's not too overwhelming and how those are distributed. So I'll go through each unit of some of the things that we've seen as changes and improvements. And from 2020 to date, we added the procurement card to help with our expenses and how we pay for things, and makes it a little bit more clear. We identified $77,000 of movable COT funds, which is something that was a very long process, but identifying where we had expenses that were not being effectively used, and some of the coding and all of that was used by COT that was a little bit duplicative, and we were able to address those. We also consolidated computer costs by moving from a desktop screen and possible laptop to having everyone with a laptop and a docking station, which saves us about $140 per person per month. We also made changes to the mail, and that we signed with a program that lets us do certified mailings from the office with a scanner that we just pay in an account, which saves us time in verifying that mailings are being sent and signed for, and we can also track them in real time. So I know from the start to finish, looking at some of the cases, we can see when service happens and start the clock at that point because we can track it online at any time. We've also separated HUD funding program codes, which has been really good at clarifying what some of the expenses are, especially as you saw last month. We have, I think, 6 different federal HUD expense categories now. And so it's a lot easier to keep up with where we are on those. So intake and education and outreach. I've been very pleased at the increase in social media, print media, and radio media. They've been doing radio spots in other languages and bringing more people to us, because that's the purpose of education and outreach. And that's something that had fallen by the wayside because of the extra demands that we have on that unit, because they also serve as intake. And so it's been really inspiring to see this focus of still trying to get out there and educate people on the things that we really push for. I know that John in Northern Kentucky has been doing a lot of work locally with people in that area. And so that's something that we really need to really celebrate, because it's what we were supposed to be doing, and we're trying to get back to that. They also have been attending at a minimum of 2 local commissions around the state per month. And that's something that really keeps us in touch with the things that are happening in other parts of Kentucky that we may not necessarily hear about. And all of this, I talked about the cell phones, but we also have been I've worked with Marianne, and Marianne has been great about adapting and changing the process as demands call for it. And so now, instead of having one specific person being able to take calls in case processing, we've worked out a schedule where all staff can receive calls for case processing and initiate a charge, which saves a lot of time for complainants on being able to get back to them, because it's not dependent on one person, but everyone. And by doing this, we've also increased our housing charges over the past few years, which is a good thing in not just meeting that contract, but being seen as an agency that allows for the facilitation of these housing complaints. All of that's on top of the increased demands by HUD to put more information into the HIMSS federal database about these contacts. And one of the issues that they had in 2020, and it was mentioned in the PAR that you all were sent, is the time that it took from initial contact from the complainants to the charge being filed. And with some of the work and the things that Marianne has been doing with that team, that time has been, we completely met for all filings last year. It's there's a 5-day period where you need to respond to someone filing something and start moving through the database. And that's been much improved. And so I want to thank the education outreach and intake team for all of that. For our mediation unit, it's no longer a stopping point. One of my big concerns when I started was looking at the case flow, and some of the ages of cases were not due to the investigation or enforcement officers, but it was the lack of process moving cases through the initial phase of mediation. And I mentioned adding that question, the mandatory question on filing. That was a big piece of it, because we would be trying to reach 2 different parties to see if they'd be open to mediating. But also, after those, as that was happening, some of the time the cases were sitting, and I looked at the numbers from when they were sent to mediation to when they were assigned, and the average was around 6 months, but some were waiting over a year to be assigned to an investigator. And the way that the process actually works and the law is written is they have 20 days. The respondent has 20 days to elect if they want to mediate. And that has been a very an important rule that SANA has wanted to follow, that 20 days. And if there's no communication or response in that 20 days, then we move it on. The time has been cut to that 20 days, but some get up to 40 if they request an extension and it's granted. But it's not just assumed that people can take all the time that they want and then respond and eventually say no to mediating anyway. I've also been very pleased that the number of mediations that have been scheduled, SANA copies me on every schedule lets me know when one is scheduled. And she's been scheduling 4 to 6 per month. And when in 2020, it was maybe 1 every 2 to 3 months. And part of that could be attributed to COVID. But as I said, I'm basing this on the information and the numbers that were from my experience and my time here. So that 4 to 6 per month, I know that there were, I think, 5 scheduled this month, and then there are 4, I think, scheduled for next month so far. One of the bigger things that we've all heard about is the enforcement and investigation piece of the office. And one of the things that has been really, I want to thank the enforcement staff and brag on them a lot in this meeting, because we've been able to streamline our investigations, and we're still working on refining that. And I'll get back to that when we talk about the legal unit. But we've had a consistently scheduled time for case panels. Does that mean we always have a conversation about probable cause? No, But we do have a time set aside where every week there is that potential for the investigators to say, these are the 3 cases I want to discuss at our next scheduled time. So those are weekly conversations that we have, and it's always on the calendar. We always leave that open. So when there are cases to discuss, we have that time. There's no time going back and forth trying to figure out a time for everyone to meet. And then we've also adopted a review strategy looking at oldest to newest, and making sure that we're not just letting the oldest cases languish, because sometimes those cases, they're missing one little piece. And so they've sat and sat, but now we're making sure we address those that have been sitting for a while. And in that note, and this is where I really want to talk about some of the things that I've seen working since 2020, and to really just talk about the extreme work of the enforcement unit. I went back and looked through the books for my first meeting and the books for today. And the reason we went out of order is I wanted to make sure these numbers were accurate. And after the numbers that you see for 2022 are the numbers as of the vote that you all took 30 minutes ago. So pulling the books from 2020, looking at the average, the case average at the beginning of that meeting was 400.8 days with 5 investigators and 252 open cases. That was one of those things that was discussed with me when I started as something we needed to definitely address. And one of the things that we've done is, you've seen, and I talked about some of the processes that we've instituted to make those changes, but we've also adopted a review strategy where we look at case age and new cases coming in and basically do like a triage. But we have also started a review process where cases of a certain age, we will pull for a secondary review to see if there are some questions that we could get answered to make that determination. So that involves a little bit of coordination and looking at the open investigation, looking at, okay, where are we? What's something that would get us to the point of probable cause or not? And if we can have a question that then, let's say Joe says, maybe you ask the respondent this question and you ask the complainant this question, we can make a determination a lot more quickly. And for some of these older cases, that has been really beneficial on cutting down that age. And so as of the vote today, looking at the employment case age average, it's 176.3 days with 3 investigators and 101 remaining open cases. And so I really wanted to commend the enforcement unit for all of their work. This is also reflected in housing. And one of the issues with housing is we do have that 100 days that we are supposed to be operating under. That has been hard to completely meet, but as you saw in that review, we did have a good percentage that fell within that 100 days. Looking at the 2020 numbers, however, in 2020 with 2 housing investigators, the case age average was 233.5 days with 18 open cases. In moving some of that work through, working through HIMSS and working with our new HUD, GTM and GTR, our managers in the federal system, we've been able to drop that to 165 days with 1 investigator. And you saw previously that we have taken more housing charges. We have more open housing cases, but that's a good thing. That means people are finally trusting us as an agency to help us solve and assist with those housing complaints. And I don't want this 165 days to be seen as a reflection on Andrew, because Andrew is still technically doing his training as a housing investigator. We had 3 people that were able to do housing training, and though they have all since left. So the average age is actually higher than it really is of the age that Andrew's had it, but he has done a great job in asking the right questions, getting some brought to resolution, and this number will be lower the next time we meet. And we will have a few more cases, but we will also have some that have been probable cause, most likely. So this number will go down. And I shared this with you before about how we stack up, but I wanted to just discuss it a little bit more in context. And our staff size has been an issue, but if you look at the numbers that were shared before, we are doing well comparatively. I talked a little bit about the budget request process and how, based on the amount of money that's budgeted for this agency by the state, that then dictates what positions we are able to post and fill. And so looking at the other agencies in comparison, the chair brought up a very great point about other agencies having more than 1/3 of their staff being investigators. And that's something that we that's something we aspire to, being able to have more investigators, because that will add to the more effective resolution of cases, or more efficient resolution of cases. The way that has worked is, when the budgets are being put together, we can request more positions, and then we ask, or they then determine in the budget phase what amount of money they're going to fund us for, and then they backfill it by saying, okay, this allows you for this position, and that position. In our last budget request proposal that was sent for this current budget, we asked for 12 positions that were not funded. And that's something that we'll do every budget, is ask for positions and justify what those positions are needed for and why we need them. It's a very long document for these. I will say that we have been assigned, as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, a new budget person in the office of the state, the budget director. And so we are working on that new relationship with helping get some of those conversations pushed through. Brandon and I talked about setting up an initial call, since this person has been assigned just recently, and we're also going to be meeting with them very soon on some of the items and things that we may face. But I did want to go back to our case age discussion, because just as for a comparable look at what it actually looks like for us, and this is why I'm so proud of our enforcement team, we have the fewest number of investigators by far. But looking at the average employment and housing numbers, and these are the numbers before today's meeting, looking at the average employment and housing numbers, comparatively, they're doing such a good job. And I know that it still seems like we're taking a lot of time, and it's longer than any of us would like, but they are really working hard, and I appreciate all that they do. And looking at the other states who have more, but are doing not nearly the same amount of work and at the same level. And to get this information, just for clarity, I reached out and met with the executive directors and deputy executive directors of these different agencies that are around us. And we talked about their process. We talked about their numbers. Some don't track all of the numbers that we do. And so that's why we have some blanks, is they either don't track or didn't want to share. But these are through conversations. Ohio let me know that they're actually looking for 4 more investigators. So that's a very interesting predicament to be in, I guess, for them to be aiming for 42. But this is something that was very enlightening to me, and hopefully to you, on seeing just how we stack up across the region and the processing. And so that's why my hat's off to the enforcement unit, and I appreciate all that they're doing. And then looking at the legal unit, in the time since 2020, we have definitely increased our probable cause activities. We have done more of the case panels and legal assistance requests of moving some of these cases along. And we've also done a great job of clearing that backlog of the pre-PC, PC cases. I cannot say enough about the work that the legal unit and Colt have been doing on clearing those cases up. One of the first things that we did when I started, and then right after Colt started, we put together a list of all the cases, reached out to all the parties, and Colt has done a really good job of either finding a closing or a closure of some of those cases, reaching settlements, getting some of the help with the law students of going through these old files has been also really helpful. Once Joe came in, Joe's direction and assigning of cases has been helpful in how we really manage this. And Sandy has done a great job of really helping keep all of this moving. And also, as we have new things coming in, making sure we're not falling behind. One of the things that we're working on is an even more streamlined checklist for investigations. I've worked with Tennessee and Missouri, especially on the workflow for different types of employment and PA and housing cases and things that are looked for. We also use the EEOC models of proof, which you have a copy of, to create even more streamlined questions and really a template to fill in doing those investigations, to then have the investigators answer these questions, which in a more timely fashion gets us to an answer. That should be completed this week or next week at the latest, on making sure we can get that out and reviewed. We've also done a few new practices that are old practices, and I mean that because they're things that this agency used to do that had fallen by the wayside, but we've really stepped back into. That's ways to expand our reach, and looking at ways the commission can step in on some complaints, and being a way to, or a voice or the state authority figure. There was a case for the Supreme Court where the Chief Justice asked where the Commission on Human Rights was on an issue, and we weren't there on that issue. It was something we hadn't weighed in, and it's something we need to do, and we're trying to do more of, because we do have a statutory responsibility for protecting all of these rights under 344. And so we need to have a say. It doesn't need to be a question by the Chief Justice of, hey, has anybody heard from KCHR? We need to make ourselves heard. And so I'm very grateful for the expanded amicus practice that we've been doing on reaching out and inserting our perspective on pending cases at the appellate level, and really working to clarify some of the language that's in our enabling statutes. And so we've filed 2, and we're in the conversation to do a few more in the coming months. And so really, really grateful to the legal team of doing all of this work and moving our agency more to the outward position that it was supposed to be in. So my final thoughts are this. We have been commended by HUD and other commissions in these meetings that I've had with the other directors and deputy directors on the work that we've done despite our numbers and our challenges. And we do have we have a lot of things that we still need to work on, but we have made a lot of progress. And I wanted to spend today just really talking about that and sharing my appreciation of the entire team, of everything that they've been doing to make this happen. It's hard. I know that I have been really tough on some of them, and we've had our disagreements, but there's a reason for it, and we've all been able to do better because of it. And so I'm very proud of what they've been doing and what they will do. And I wanted to take today to just thank all of them. I let everyone know that today, for people that can make it in, we're going to have a little get together just to celebrate some of the success that they've done. Want to make sure everybody just knows that I really appreciate what they've been doing. And then especially with some of the demands that I've placed on them. And one of the only things that I think moving forward, we have things that we want to work on and that we need to work on, that being that streamlined process, cleaning up some of the things that we send out. We're cleaning up some of the letters. I want to look at modernizing and cleaning up the book and the way that looks and feels, to give it more of an updated and professional look. So that's something I want to work on, and I'll put together a mock of what it looks like and share that with you all to see how you feel about that as a modification. And one other thing that I really hope to do is work with you all on ensuring that we get more funding, working with your respective legislators in your districts, and just finding ways to go even further than we are. But I did want to just take today and thank you for indulging me and letting me talk about this. But I just wanted to really thank everyone here. Thank you all as commissioners, and thank the overall KCHR team for all the hard work. And we'll keep it moving, and hopefully these numbers will be even better when we come back around and have this discussion again. So with that, I will stop talking. If people have questions or comments, happy to field them and discuss.
Any questions from any commissioner?
Just want to thank you as executive director and the team for all of the progress that has happened, and words can't express the work that must still be done to help get the resources and staffing. But thank you for laboring and working at it from several different angles. It's very noticeable from my vantage point. So I just wanted to express that.
Commissioner Cheney?
Terrence, I just wanted to say thank you. With, I guess, now a couple of years on the commission, I know where we were in 2020. Where we are today is light years ahead. It's a remarkable improvement. And I enjoyed watching you mature as an executive director and your leadership skills. And this is one of the most high-performing teams I think I've seen, to be able to accomplish what this staff accomplishes, given the constraints and not having nearly as many staff as our comparable agencies. Y'all are doing a great job. I know I ask a lot of questions, and I probably drive folks crazy sometimes, but overall, I mean, just the progress from the time I joined the commission through today is just remarkable. So thank you to you and every member of the team.
Questions from other commissioners?
No, I didn't have a question. I was just also going to commend Terrence and the staff on the hard work they put in. And thanks for the information and the research that you put in to provide to us, so that we can see the comparison where you were and where you're currently are, and, you know, plan on being in the future. I appreciate the hard work that you put into the report that you gave us.
Commissioner Rabbi Litzman here. Having witnessed the tremendous change over the last several years, it's still particularly jarring to hear it. And I commend you guys.
Anyone else?
I just have one thing, knowing that, one question. These are changes that were recently done this year, right?
The bulk of them, it's really been in the past year and a half.
So the fact that these changes that you had mentioned at the beginning, like all the computer and the paperwork, the casework that you guys have started just less than a year. And I am honestly shocked at the amount of stuff that you guys have accomplished in that little amount of time. And I can only express or be in awe with how much, hopefully more you guys will do in the future with even more changes. And if I've talked to you personally, and I see that you work really well with everybody. And I hope that you guys enjoy lunch or whatever activity you guys have for the staff, and congratulate them all on behalf of me. And I don't know, I guess everybody else as well, because they are doing an awesome job. And I really do appreciate it, because it does sound like you guys, and the numbers show that you guys are doing great. So numbers always talk, and that's awesome. So congratulations. And thank you guys so much for all the work that you guys do.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Terrence, thanks for that report. I will ask that you make that PowerPoint presentation available to each of the commissioners to send those out, because it'll be very helpful when we get around to doing our strategic planning session in terms of things that we need to do. So thank you for that. So next on the agenda is the Education and Outreach Report, Marion Taylor.
Yes, Chair.
No, Commissioner Cheney, hold on.
Chair, I need to apologize to you and to the commission members. When we voted, I believe a few minutes ago, to ratify the late September closures, there were a couple of cases in there that I did have questions about, and frankly, I apologize. I got lost in, were those cases late September closures or were they the new cases? And so I didn't speak up when I should have.
Go ahead with your questions.
The question, and again, I apologize. The questions that I had actually primarily revolved around 9140E, 9149E, and 9300E. And in each of these cases, the individual was deaf or hard of hearing, and there apparently could be no reasonable accommodation due to safety concerns. I would assume that these are all manufacturing or similar facilities. You know, the question that I have, I mean, the bar is quite high for this particular claim. A direct threat has got to be a significant risk of substantial harm to coworkers. And it's got to be sort of immediate and severe. It can't be speculative or improbable. So I just wanted to ask if it was possible to get a little bit more information around what that threat, how that determination was made, and whether any reasonable accommodation might have been offered. And I also wanted to share that, I know the Kentucky Commission on Deaf and Hard of Hearing recently held the Deaf Festival, and at that festival, they had multiple manufacturing automotive employers who met with job seekers, and there are lots of folks that are deaf or hard of hearing that work at Toyota and Ford and elsewhere. So just wanted to ask if any additional information might be available around those 3 cases.
So one of the things, and Cynthia, jump in, but for those cases, in the response and in conversations, they had they would have experts show the direct harm that was possible, but also they had offers of other placements that they'd still be employed, but they were just placements that weren't taken. And so they tried to accommodate by new placement options for.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why they'd be NPC'd, is they still gave them options. It's just the ones that they wanted weren't safely possible.
Was that true in all of the cases?
Let's see.
And we can have Chad chime in too if he's, I believe the cases were Chad's.
Let's see.
Chad's raising his hand.
May I address the commission?
Go ahead.
All right. So, first off, I just wanted to clarify 9140 and 9149. Those are the Fraley cases. 9300 is the Ward case. That isn't a hard of hearing case, but I'm happy to address that one too. The complainant in that case.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Have I missed something? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So in that case, and not saying the complainant's name, but 9140, 9149. As the investigator, I spoke with the complainant, and I also developed, the complainant had supporting witnesses regarding his background. So we're aware, we were talking about that. In one of that complainant's cases, there was, he appeared to have a conflict with a trainer, and that didn't work out, but it didn't appear to be, it was dismissed as a direct threat after consultation with management there. But yes, ma'am, in terms of those situations, the industrial role he was going to be in was such that he couldn't hear like warning signs, alarms, things like that. And they raised a direct threat, and after evaluation, the consensus was that he did pose a direct threat in those contexts. Prior to that consultation, I'd been working with his uncle to get verification. You know, they are hard of hearing people that can work in a number of industrial backgrounds, but it doesn't appear that those two that he replaced at. And in particular, one of those, there seemed to be some sort of conflict with the trainer. I think the other one of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do have a case or two. I think the other one of those one of those was a staffing agency, actually. I think there was a third complaint. I got confused, but both of those seem to involve that single instance with a training situation. The Ward case, 9300. Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'll stop and clarify and make sure I haven't missed anything. Do you have any questions, ma'am, on the 9140 and 9149?
Yeah. So it was, typically the employer can install strobe lighting or other visual. Here's I guess what I would offer. It's given that other major automotive manufacturers in the state clearly successfully employ folks that are deaf and hard of hearing. To the extent possible, perhaps we can refer employers to the Commission on Deaf and Hard of Hearing. They got folks that are happy to provide resources and suggestions and to help employers find ways to enable deaf and hard of hearing folks to be successful job applicants and successful workers. Again, the bar for no reasonable accommodation is extraordinarily high. The harm must be serious and likely to occur. So if we perhaps could just provide some additional resources in some of these cases, is that a possibility that we can get some linkages there with the Commission on Deaf and Hard of Hearing and the employer?
We can add that going forward. And then if you, honestly, if that's something, if you want to send, and I can look it up, we can also add it to our website on the resources tab as well, as a resource that we can refer people to.
Okay. I'm just very challenged to understand how major employers can successfully employ folks in the exact same scenario, I think, as may have been the case here.
So I think, and one of the clarifications, because this is, we use using the models that we have to have those same elements of proof. We do also know that each of these things are case and position specific. So while there are positions and manufacturers that do have those that have successfully made accommodations in these, it's also specific to whatever that position was. And so there may not be some of the same accommodations in one position that there would be for another. And so outside of the full investigation, that's hard to really assess from this perspective. Joe is happy to answer or look into it more and respond for a little bit more detailed information about these specific ones, just outside of the public realm about the investigation and all of that. And so if you wanted, that's something we can also do, but we can definitely make a referral to those resources in future in cases and on our website to make that even more readily available.
If we could, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, got all your questions answered, Commissioner Cheney?
It did, and I apologize for confusing 9300E and with the mix. But that was the primary case that I had questions around.
Okay. Okay. I think we're back to Mary Ann.
The education outreach and intake report before you. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer them. There is one event that was not mentioned in the report. Prior to COVID, the school across the street, St. Francis, used to come every year for Cultural Day. And during Cultural Day, they walk through the agency, someone for education outreach, myself or Juan or both of us together, usually sit down with them and talk about the things that we do here, the displays that are in the office, why they're up, things like the Gallery of Great Black Kentuckians or the Kentucky Civil Rights Hall of Fame, how folks are inducted into those halls of fame or the gallery. So I said all that to say they'll be back tomorrow. It'll be the first time in 2 years that we've been able to host them. I'm told they may bring anywhere between 30 and 40 people. That would be students and a teacher or two, and maybe some of the parents who are interested. So just letting you all know that we are back open for business in the education outreach field. And we do have people coming to the office just to sit down and talk with us. One of the things that we do try to do is encourage those younger folks to take an interest in human and civil rights as a career. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. I have a question, Marianne. For National Hispanic Heritage Month, were there any particular activities?
We did not do, we usually have that big event in Shelbyville, but it's an every other year event where we bring in a lot of speakers. It's a consortium, so to speak, and we didn't do that this year. This was our off year. But we would do it again next year. We do that every 2 years. So we haven't had any, that I'm aware of anyway, any major celebrations hosted by this office. Okay, thank you all.
Commissioner Henry, you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just suggesting something. I will, though, make a statement. I have attended previous years those events in Shelbyville, and they were really top class, full of information, some great speakers that came in. We did a lot of networking, and I would advise you, if you've never attended, to make sure that you've noted that on your calendar and do make an effort to attend. And hello, Marianne, it's good to see you.
Okay, any other questions, Marianne? Hearing none, we'll go to the legal unit, Joe.
Morning, everybody. Bear with me. I'm recovering from laryngitis, so my voice is still kind of shot. Just some updates. You have our report. We have some updates on some of the cases since the report was submitted a couple weeks ago, but in 1066 PA, we received a recommended order from the hearing officer in our favor, finding a violation of the Kentucky Civil Rights Act for religious discrimination. That is still subject to exceptions, and so we are waiting for exceptions to be filed by the parties. We do expect that the respondent will appeal in that case, but we'll update you in a future. You'll probably, by the next meeting, we should have an order for you to consider. 1187 PA was originally submitted for closure. We're still working out the settlement. We have one term left to confirm there. 2175, however, it is good for closure. It has been settled. We still have not gotten an order in the McKenzie case, which has been on appeal for a long time now. And we are, waiting for the court to decide the question of our amicus brief in the case of Payne versus aggregate processing. Unlike Turner versus Norton Healthcare, the respondent in Payne has rejected or responded in the negative to our amicus brief and is asking the court not to admit it. They can do that. They can respond and ask the court not to accept our brief. It would be unusual for the court not to accept it. Amicus briefs are pretty standard practice, and we have, of course, an agency interest in KCRA claims. So that motion is still pending. Our amicus brief in Joyce Turner versus Norton Healthcare has been accepted by the court. It will consider it. And we are awaiting the defendant's brief in that case, the appellee's brief, by the beginning of next month. I believe that's it. We've also, one other thing, pre-charge cases. We reviewed old files that had been dormant for a long time that were still here when I took over with the legal unit. We were able to close 5 of those, which is shrinks our case backlog to half. So those cases are a majority. One we closed for lack of jurisdiction. Another, 2 of the cases were statute of limitations problems. I can't explain why they sat for so long prior to my coming on board, but they are being closed now. So our case backlog is shrinking. We have identified another case at the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which we may have an amicus interest in. We will talk to you more. We don't know when the brief would be due, and we're still ironing out our arguments. But we have more amicus work to do. We have, as of yesterday, we preliminarily approved another PC charge in a housing case. So we are, and that charge will be disclosed in the next report. So legal units moving right along, filing and arguing and having a blast. So other than laryngitis. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to field them.
Any questions for Joe? Okay, thank you, Joe. And we'll come back on the new business to talk about the racing FC situation. So just hang around. No questions on Joe's report for anyone? Any committee reports? I don't think there are any. Now we go to new business. So let's talk about racing FC, Joe.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it brief because we're still trying to iron out exactly what angle we want to take here. But so at the beginning of this month, a report was issued finding a series of illegal activities by the former coach of Racing FC. That's the U.S. Women's National Soccer team here in National League Soccer team here in Louisville. The former coach was accused of sexual harassment, one of the players, an inappropriate relationship with one of the staff members. And this was not previously disclosed to the public at all until the very beginning of this month. The report details significant violations of the Kentucky Civil Rights Act when it comes to sexual discrimination. Racing Louisville has taken the steps to terminate the coach, but we are considering what the commission's interest would be in pursuing perhaps a complaint. I don't have a complaint for you to consider at this point. The statute of limitations for a complaint in this case would be 180 days from the discovery of the wrongful act. So we have some time. Legal unit is considering our options and what a commissioner initiated complaint could look like and what the remedies it may seek, mostly policy changes, I imagine. But it is a great concern to the commission. The legal unit believes that it should be a concern to the commission because it is, no employee anywhere should be subjected to sex discrimination, especially not in the kind of case that was detailed in this report. The report is available on the U.S. Women's Soccer League website. It's called the Yates Report. You can read it for yourself. It actually details the discrimination alleged against 3 different teams in that league involving coaches, male coaches, and women players. And so it's very concerning to us. And we'll at this stage, I've discussed with Terrence some of our options and with Chair Burse. But when the legal unit develops a more formal proposal for a complaint, I'll present it to the commission and see what our options are.
Okay, that's a preliminary report from in terms of what Terrence and Joe are thinking about. If any of the commissioners have any questions or comments, I'll ask you to, share those with Joe and with Terrence as they work through this to get to a determination of whether or not we should bring a complaint or do anything in regards to this particular matter. But I want you to be aware of that. Is there any other new business?
I have a question. Are we going to discuss about the upcoming possibility of our retreat training? I know we're supposed to send in prospective dates, and I was wondering about that. Any update on that, Terrence?
So I am working with getting more information from the prospective facilitator and some of their experience after talking to Chair Burse, getting some of their experience and working with similar agencies and setting up a conversation with the 3 of us. And then we can then iron out some dates and really run that by you all on if it seems like a good direction to go in for that conversation. And once that's determined, we'll get the scheduling started. And it's my apologies on the delay. He has been asked to go facilitate a planning in Ireland. So hard to pin him down right this second. So,
well, my question is, would the training all of the training be, or the retreat be with a facilitator, or would it not just be commissioners, us, and with you possibly, or the team, or is it going to be a combination or hybrid type training? Because I was thinking that we were going to have more of the commissioners versus having a facilitator type of discussion retreat?
So it would be, I think hybrid is a better way to explain it. We would use their tactics on getting us to an understanding of expectations and what we want to do moving forward, and use that as part of our overall conversation for the retreat. But we would want to have that facilitated discussion with someone else working through that with us.
Commissioner Sarr, I think what you said is where, at least initially, where I was in terms of what was needed in terms of doing that. But also I was looking at getting someone who's had experience with agency like us to help us work through that process in terms of where we are. So, Terrence and I are now currently disconnected, but we're going to reconnect in terms of what the expectations are. Hopefully we'll get that done sometime early next year, because right now, just, we're just not, we're not definitive around when and all of the items to be included as a part of that, but we will get there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions from anyone?
And one other question, I know we have are we anticipating any in-person meetings, or are they all going to be virtual? Is it going to be based on you again sending out surveys, or are we moving forward before the end of the year?
I would think we would do in person. However, for like this meeting and why we did the survey, I had a few people reach out to me that they wouldn't be able to make it if we were in person because of commitments and things that have come up. And so I wanted to get numbers on, I just want to make sure that we have a quorum. The hybrid option is a little bit more difficult with the tech limitations that we have. And so we had quite a few people reach out and ask and basically say they wouldn't be able to make it in person. I wanted to see if we could get a quorum. And so the likelihood is being in person. Especially now that we're able, I think that most people would prefer it if they can. So
we've got one more meeting scheduled currently scheduled for the rest of this year. And I think that we're at this point where we really need to go back to in-person meetings. And so the sort of standing running rule is that we will probably do the in-person meeting unless there are circumstances that says we ought to do a hybrid or a virtual. But I think that's where we are. At least that's where I am in terms of my thinking. So I guess for all practical, you can say that the November 17th meeting will be in person in Louisville, so people can plan accordingly. And so we can send that notice information out and be able to do that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. As I said, the next meeting is November the 17th, and it said it will be an in-person meeting. So we should plan accordingly in terms of that. If there are any item or information that you want on the agenda or matter to be discussed, please share that with Terrence so that gets added. In closing, one other thing, I said the 17th, November 17th is the last meeting of the year. When we had some discussions back a couple of months ago, our not meeting in December and the summer month was said to be a factor in terms of the backlog of cases or any of those things. So I would say to Terrence and the staff, if there's something that needs to be done in the month of December to keep our average rolling and cases going down, you need to let us know that pretty soon so we can in fact call a special meeting in December so as to be able to take care of that. So
I have one other question. Before the end of the year, are there any potential trainings for commissioners for hearing officer issues or anything around that from the courts?
So we can get you the videos for hearing officer certification. The actual in-person trainings that they do, they are still not coming. It would be the bulk ones that they do early in the year. And so if you wanted to get started on that, just if you follow up with me, I can get you the videos sent to start your certification, because we have to get them ordered from the AG's office.
Right. And for the good of the order, could it be sent out to all the commissioners, just to, especially we have a new commissioner here, the information, kind of like a backstory on that, and to bring her up to speed on the history of us training as hearing officers, and also just put the opportunity out there, so if other commissioners are interested, that they might possibly take advantage of that.
So that has been, and I reached out a couple times to make that available. The way that the AG's office, they don't want us to just have because we have to buy the video from them. We don't get one that we can send around because it's a DVD, which I don't understand. So we'd have to buy multiple DVDs, and they're upwards of $1,000 each. So if people are interested, we are, at any time I can order them. It's just for people who have expressed that interest. And it may have been right before you joined the last time I sent that out, asking for people who had that interest to send it.
Right. So they can't be shared, is what you're saying, the DVDs?
I mean, you could, technically they want to have a track of who is doing what, having what video. That way they can log the hours and certification. Because if they send us, for example, if they send us a video for you, then we can have it on there that you're starting the certification process. And so then it's easier to track than us saying, oh, by the way, after she was done, she sent the DVD to Commissioner Parra. And for the record keeping, it's easier to make sure we're all in one piece. We could, if you wanted, schedule for anyone who's interested. We could have a bulk viewing, so to speak, and set it up in the office and come in. It's it's like 6-hour videos. So it will be full day things of doing those, if that's something that some of you would prefer.
Well, I was just thinking, I didn't receive that email, but if that, for cost efficiency, it might be better to look at something than ordering for every person.
Right. So anyone that's interested, just let me know, and then we can set up a time. We can set up some times to start doing the viewings in the conference room at the office and get certifications that way.
Well, why don't you, Commissioner Sart requested, go ahead and get the video and send it to her so she can start on that on her own time in terms of where it is, and then we can work with the rest of the commissioners in terms of whether they want to do it and when.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you all for your attendance today. And there being no other matter to come before this body, we stand adjourned. So we'll see you in November, if not on the phone before then.
Do we not need a motion?
We did it by acclamation.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank all.
Thank you, and welcome, Commissioner Parra.